Good evening. Welcome to the Claw studio here at the Royal Opera House and to this Insight supported by Rolex. I'm Hannah French and tonight we explore Semele, Handel's opera of desire and destruction. Now, following sell-out success in Paris, director Oliver Mears and conductor Christian Kernan bring this opera back to the heart of Handel's London, to Covent Garden, where Semele was premiered in 1744. But theirs is a new staging, a dark and satirical affair in which we see Semele's love for the powerful Jupiter become something of a cautionary tale of politics and pleasure, yes, but also power and privilege. Now, we will meet and talk about this production with the creative team and members of the cast tonight, but we're going to start with some music from the show, and I am delighted to welcome soprano Priti Yende to sing Endless Pleasure, accompanied by chief repetitor Susanna Stranders.
Endless pleasure, endless love, Semele enjoys above. Endless love, endless love, endless endless love, Semele enjoys above.
Thank you, Pretty and Susie as well. Pretty, welcome. Let's also welcome your two other members of the cast, Ben Bliss and Brindley Sherritt. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening in what must be a really busy week of rehearsals. Pretty, if I come to you first, I mean, you've all worked on this together in Paris, and now you're adapting it for the stage here at Covent Garden. What are you working on at the moment?
Really, from what we started at the beginning, growing from there and taking it one step at a time and finding new ways to really feel at home because it's not so new anymore, and being comfortable also as we're navigating through it while preparing it for all of you.
Finding, I suppose, these characters in a different place, but very much still themselves.
Absolutely.
Let's start with Semele. How could we not? A woman who risks it all for love and faces the consequences. I think we often have a view of her of being quite vain and naive, but she's much more nuanced than that, isn't she?
Of course, because she's a human being. We are human beings and we are complex. There's only not just one side of ourselves. And this was something that was quite exciting, working with Oliver and my colleagues, discovering her character and being true to her journey, to what's written on the score, to what she says, and her true love for Jupiter, her complex relationship with her dad, who has already made her a promise to another man, but her heart really is taken by Jupiter. And then, of course, in that, of course, when you mix human beings and gods, they're bound to be problems. And so,
age-old problem.
And so, while I was going through the whole part and working with Oliver and being guided, I was quite surprised that even though I would think it's true love, yes, but how much of it has been manipulated by the endless pleasure of Jupiter, which is something new for her. She's never truly expressed any kind of joy, any kind of freedom. It's the only time in the opera where we see truly her smile, where we truly see her joy. But throughout the opera, she's always questioning, she's always asking, and not truly being herself. So I think in the end, for her to choose to follow her heart, I admire that, because what is life without love?
Well said.
Well said, indeed. Ben, you are in the role of Jupiter, king of the gods. Don't let it go to your head, just saying. Now, your take on this relationship with Semele, if we were to put protector at one end of the scale and predator at the other, how do you slide that out? Where do you see his role within that?
You know, I find the interesting characters in the oeuvre are just like all of us. I've never been just happy or just sad. It's always both. And I think that's what makes, one of the things that makes this character very interesting to me is that is a person of very high status and wealth and all that, and that comes with a lot of walls that are built around his person. And managing the prospect of letting someone into those walls and the liability that love and feelings can bring up, and you know, those gates come slamming down pretty hard sometimes.
Well, he has a vulnerable side too.
Indeed.
It's just finding out where to press those buttons.
Exactly.
Brindley. Two-role Brindley Sherritt.
Yeah.
The dual roles of Cadmus and Somnus. Let's talk first about Cadmus, King of Thebes. He's quite the orchestrator, isn't he? You know, you push Semele into one unwanted marriage and then maybe unwittingly into the arms of Jupiter.
Yeah, orchestrator is very kind. He's more manipulative. I play two characters. One of them is fun. The other one isn't really. He wants the very best for her, but really he's so in awe and wants to please Juno that everything is done to please her, even though it means he's not very kind to his daughter sometimes and pushes her, wants to make things work and wants everybody to behave and puts in their places, and of course he can't really handle it. He's pretty uptight. Somnus is not uptight.
Right, okay. So Somnus, the other side of it, and actually scenes that we often think of the comic side of this opera, but you know, comedy, tragedy.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah, I would say Somnus is, I mean, the aria is not funny at all. Well, the slow aria is not funny at all, but certainly, particularly in Ollie's production, I would say that what is really quite refreshing is Somnus is not sleepy because of a lack of sleep. It's more, let me say, chemically induced. But the scene is beautifully set, and it makes it very easy. A very clear distinction between Somnus and Cadmus, thankfully.
Yes. Pretty. This idea of the psychology of a role, what's been the biggest challenge for you preparing Semele, musically, technically, or psychologically?
Well, it's been quite an exciting challenge. Sorry, I'm recovering from a cold, so excuse me if I cough here and there. Firstly, singing in English is new to me. And it's been like the first thing I thought, oh my God, can I really sing? Because it's a language that's not so easy to sing in compared to maybe the Italian or that I'm used to anyway. So this was a challenge I was really looking forward to. And also knowing that I'll be bringing it here in the UK was another challenge to really to polish it in more. So I'm grateful for the people who have helped me to prepare it in that way. But also what was interesting for me, because I've been singing quite a lot of bel canto, it felt like the purest part of bel canto, singing Handel in a very extraordinary way. And I remember being in South Africa actually learning all the choruses. So when I got invited, I was like, I know the opera, but I didn't know the role of Semele, but all the choruses. So it was just a nice full circle coming in. And I'm really grateful to really have the opportunity to explore Handel in this way. And it's a beautiful role. She has so many colors, and Handel has written it so beautifully. It's really allowed to be vocally expressive, but in a most beautiful way and most pure way. But also there are parts, especially in the last act, where she's really showing that she really wants what she wants, and she's not turning back. And it has been quite exciting to climb all those mountains and the valleys.
Yeah, I mean, ambition is what she has, but also what Handel has for his singers.
Absolutely.
It's a great thing to come to. Speaking of which, Ben, Jupiter has some amazing arias, you know, ranging from the seductive to the most thunderous. What parts of this score do you find particularly rewarding?
You know, a lot of times the lyric tenor plays the role of the fresh-faced prince who's in love with the soprano, which is always fun. And there are many, many arias about, oh gosh, I really love the soprano. I hope she loves me too. I'm really excited, but really nervous, but really excited, but really nervous, which is fun. It's a lot more fun, especially in the rare opportunity that you have in a role like this, to have moments of that and then turn around and be a drug-fueled, crazy, sadistic lunatic. Contrast makes the world go round, you know what I mean?
Definitely. Brinley, do you have a moment that you look forward to in this opera? Certainly through the Paris performances, has there been a point where you go, oh, this is great? It doesn't have to be a moment that you're singing, it may well be, but is there that moment?
I really, really enjoy Act 3. Yes, I enjoy singing Somnus and I enjoy singing the aria. There's some terrific choruses at the end that we are on stage for. When this massive sound hits you from behind, or terror chorus and things like that, it's absolutely amazing. The choral singing is exceptional.
Yeah. Ben, this is a new staging in so many different ways. Obviously, we can't have too many spoilers, but I wonder if the actual staging, the surroundings, the ambience on stage, whether that has shifted your interpretation of Jupiter, perhaps from having learnt the arias in isolation before bringing them to this.
Indeed it has. Yeah, if you, many times with an opera production like this, you learn the arias, all of the music, just sort of as it is on the page. And so I was approaching it thinking of, okay, so I'm the king of the gods. What's that like? But then we come here and it's, or in this case, Paris first, and it's set more on sort of a Park Avenue sort of feeling. And the ambiance is very powerful, very palpable. It really sets up a world. And singing aside, just as a performer, it's so wonderful to be sort of, it's like being a fish dropped in an aquarium. It's like, okay, I know what to do here. I know what to explore and what I have to work with. And Ollie and the team have built a really, really interesting world for us to play within.
Yeah. Priti, you talked a little bit before about finding this purity in your voice, that particular avenue of bel canto singing, but also I like the idea that you sung the choruses, that you knew this opera from a very physical perspective. Going into the world of early music, I just wonder whether for you there were any particular challenges or things that you really wanted to get inside, and what it was like working with Christian on these things.
I think mostly I was afraid that I would not sound baroque enough. But I was very grateful to be supported by the experts who are very much doing this repertoire, saying that it's the voice, you know.
Exactly.
The character in the voice. But also the challenge for me was to trust the simplicity of the score and not try to maneuver or change or make it more than it is. So literally I had like a Mozart kind of experience when you're a singer and you haven't been singing Mozart for a long time. And so it was really a lovely challenge.
Yeah. What about things like ornamentation, cadenzas, that kind of thing? Has that been fun to really get your teeth into?
That's the fun part, which is really from the bel canto repertoire. It has been really fun finding colors. For me, variations are not there to show off. They're not there to show you that how great I am, but it's an added expression with respect to the score and respect to the color of the character and her truth in that moment. And so also listening to the voice, what the voice can do. They're not supposed to be harder. They're supposed to be in even like voice, like without words kind of expression, because so much she wants to express and words are not enough. So it has been wonderful to find what you would call fireworks, but in my sense, looking at the color from the beginning until the end, her last aria, it's truly the depth of her trueness and her how she evolves.
Yeah, because she does go through quite a transformation,
yeah.
doesn't she? I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, at the beginning, she's complaining, she's not free, and then suddenly she's experiencing endless pleasure, and then all of a sudden, boom, she can't sleep. So it all goes from worst, until the end. So it's incredible, though, the layers in which Handel put her. That it's like a little thread that just goes and grows and grows and grows into a full tree that she becomes when she sings, for example, the last aria, or me, like, why did I find myself in here? But I accept, because what is life without truly going for what you believe you deserve?
Quite. Ben, you're going to sing for us in a little while a very famous aria, something that I would wager anybody who is new to Semele would actually recognize. What do you think it is about some of the music that Handel writes here that keeps speaking to people nearly 300 years on?
If I knew, I'd be Justin Bieber.
All right.
You know, Handel has his style, and some people talk about a formula, but I think like Mozart and Verdi and many of the composers who remain in the standard repertoire, they find a way to capture something truly human in the notes and the music and the words that we centuries later can still identify as an experience or a sensation that we have had and felt. And there are a few who have done it better.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to sing Where'er You Walk. I mean, I suppose that out of context, people walk down the aisle to that music. When you actually in the character of Jupiter, it does take on different resonances, right? Because you know what's come before and you know what's coming up later.
It certainly does. It's as I was saying before, it's always really fun to, if you're singing it at a wedding, it's a love song. It's sweet and it's special. It's a lot of fun to build some layers behind that or underneath that are fueled by an ulterior motive with some sinister underpinnings, which is Oh, it's really fun. You got to come see the show.
Clearly, no doubt. Now, we've had some images projected on the wall behind us as we've been going along. So, Brynley, if I were to ask you to set up for us the aria that you're going to sing next, can you just, again, not necessarily giving away the whole thing, but put us in the picture as to where you are and what we might imagine as you sing this aria?
He loves the dark. He hates being in the light. Funny enough, the aria, although it's lovely and flowing, is actually, a lot of it has exclamation marks. Leave me loathsome light. And I'm doing a lot of this in production. I hate the light, and yet they force me to look at the light. And the only thing that wakes me up is them mentioning the name of Pasithea. That's the only way that I will come alive and coming to the light. But this is certainly, at this point, it doesn't want to have anything to do with being awake or compos mentis.
We've all been there.
Yes.
We've all been there. Thank you, all three of you, for taking the time to explore these roles with us tonight. It's great. Prissy, Ben, we'll say goodbye to you for now. It's not the end. But over to you, Brynley and Susie again at the piano. Thank you. Thank you, Brinley and Susie. Somnus, god of sleep. He was among us, even if he wanted us to leave. Well, we've heard a couple of arias that punctuate Semele's sad and yet ambitious story. But yet this is Handel, and there is always further to go in the score. So we're going to dig deeper now with Susanna Stranders into, well, she's going to walk us through some of the highlights of Semele. And there's a lot to discover in this wonderful score. Take it away, Susie.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The music of Semele is perfectly suited to the operatic stage. It is full of variety. The orchestration is inventive. The recitatives are expressive. The characterizations are vividly drawn. And there are dances galore. There are gavottes, there's a Sicilienne, there's a hornpipe, there's a rhythmic sort of pulsating throughout the piece that's really wonderful through these dances. The subject matter of Semele, with her ecstatic love for the god Jupiter, her immolation, the birth of the wild god Bacchus, might lend itself to music of wild abandon. But not so in this score. It is full of some of the most beautiful music and touching arias that Handel ever wrote. I was chatting to conductor Christian about the score and what he thought might be the highlights and what makes it such a wonderful piece. And one of the things that Christian said is that the role of Semele, rather like Cleopatra in Julius Caesar, requires extraordinary vocal dexterity and versatility. And we are, of course, very lucky to have Pretty singing the role of Semele for us in this run. But we, of course, have the brilliant arias, all the notes and the scales and so on, which represent the Semele of the sort of the ambition and the vanity and the hedonism. But there are also arias on the other side of the coin, which show a person of vulnerability and naivety. And these are really quite subtle and gentle moments. I'm just going to play for you the opening of her sleep aria in Act 2. I believe that Handel has this ability to say so much with so little. There's hardly anything playing at this point, and yet we immediately are in the world of sleep and dreams. You don't want to hear me singing any more of it. Wait, you're much better off buying a ticket and hearing Pretty singing it. But it's just so simple, so transparent in its economy of means in which to immediately paint the dramatic moment. And I think in all of Handel's music, he has this extraordinary ability to say so much, so economically, and it's really exciting. The other thing that Christian and I talked about were the powerful use of recitatives in this piece. We have two types of recitative. Recitative, by the way, is when the singing is closer to speech than singing in some ways. The singers follow the natural speech inflections of the language, and it helps to move the narrative along a little bit quicker between arias and other numbers. We have what's called secco recitative, which is very free and improvised. and it's accompanied by a group of continuo players. And Christian has brought together a wonderful group of musicians for the run of performances. We have 2 theorbo players who will also double up as guitarists. We have a harpsichordist, we have a cellist, and there will be a chamber organ. And what is wonderful about these secco recitatives is that no one performance will be the same as another. So depending on what happens on the stage and the energy of the performance at any given moment, these wonderful continuo players will catch different spontaneous moments and find flavours and dramatic colours through their accompanying to support the stage and the drama. And I mean, it's amazing that the different qualities of articulation and instrumental colours that these players can find through these recitatives. The other type of recitative is called accompanied recitative. Now, this also should sound quite free, but actually it's far more structured. Handel writes in 4/4 time, and everything is bracketed and notated, and the accompanied recitatives are on the whole accompanied by the strings. But although it's conducted and there is this structure, the singers also should find their own natural flexibility through the number. There's 2 accompanied recitatives that I particularly love in this piece. One is just before Juno's aria. Awake, Saturnia, from thy lethargy, and she goes off into this big frenzy. But the one I'm going to play for you is actually Semele's final aria before she dies. It's about a page, 2 pages of music, and once again, Handel, with this collection of string players and very little means, brilliantly evokes this poor person saying goodbye to life. I'm just going to play, again, the introduction to this number.
He comes, for of his lightning scorch me. I feel my life consume. In another life, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be a soprano. I mean, it's just... It's an absolutely heartbreaking moment, and the music couldn't be more perfect. I am going to wrap up in a minute by introducing Ben, who's going to sing an aria for you, but I should just mention the choruses before we move on to that section. There are not as many choruses in Semele as there are in some of his other operas, but what there are absolutely terrific. And actually, the chorus that follows that aria I just started singing is perhaps one of the most shocking and surprising moments in opera. Oh, terror and astonishment. It's like a bomb goes off. It's extraordinary. But the richness of the words at this point in this chorus is just heartbreaking. It's just extraordinary. I'm going to read you these words.
O terror and astonishment. Nature to each allots his proper sphere. But that forsaken, we like meteors err. Tossed through the void by some rude shock, we're broke. And all our boasted fire is lost in smoke. It's an absolutely extraordinary moment, not just in Semele, but in all opera. And just you wait till you get there, it's something else. So to finish, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to perform Where'er You Walk, which is undeniably one of the most famous arias in the world. It's performed at weddings and christenings and funerals the world over. And it's simple and possible for pretty much anyone to sing or play. So it's a real gift for amateur musicians as well. What's also lovely about it is it's a nature aria. Handel, in Alcina and Orlando, there are also nature arias. But it's an oasis of complete calm amidst what could be quite a dramatic frenzy at this point. Semele is aiming at immortality with dangerous ambition, I think is the line. And Jupiter needs to find a way to distract her, so he transports Semele's sister, Ino, up to be a companion to Semele, and then he promises these gardens of paradise, which might also be the gardens of sexual bliss as well. There are cool breezes, shady trees, blossoming flowers. There is no virtuosic cadenzas or ornaments in this. It's simple. It's just an oasis of tranquility. You can hear the little breezes in the strings as they da 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 da. And you're very, very lucky. You're not hearing it by an amateur tonight, not at all. I'm very, very delighted to introduce you to our Jupiter, Ben Bliss, who will finish this little segment with a performance of Where'er You Walk.
Thank you, Ben. And I can tell from the atmosphere in the room, the looks on your faces, that this Jupiter is going to prove very persuasive. Thank you to Susie, just exiting stage right, for that wonderful illustration, lifting the cover of the score and letting us inside for that while. Now, the legend of Semele, it's been captured in all sorts of works of art, but I think it's safe to say that Handel's score is perhaps the best well known. So let's hear a little bit more now from the creative team behind this new staging. Please welcome the Royal Opera's director, Oliver Mears, and conductor, Christian Kernan. Ollie, Christian, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Very busy at the moment in various rehearsal rooms and on stage. Ollie, I'd just like to start with Paris.
Yeah.
Semele in Paris. I mean, you've been there for a run there. I just wonder how you felt, rave reviews aside, of how it was received there. What did the audiences make of it? What was the vibe?
Well, it's not a piece that's completely unfamiliar to a Paris audience. It was actually staged at the Théâtre Champs-Élysées about 20 years ago by someone who's very well known to this place, Sir David McVicar, who has directed many productions here, of course. So people are familiar with it, maybe more so than with certainly other Handel oratorios.
Yes.
And I think there is something in the piece that perhaps appeals as well to the French temperament as well, because there's humour, there's sex, there's desire, there's politics, there's all of these things. And certainly on the first night, at least, there was a lot of enthusiasm and, a real engagement with the material and passion for it, I think. That's certainly what I intuited. And it's a very, very nice place to work, the Champs-Élysées, in quite a nice part of town, I have to say.
Yeah, and they're all worse.
That's where you brought your new jacket.
Exactly, the shoes.
Very natty it is. You weren't there with Christian. Different conductor, I should just make clear.
Yes, Emmanuel Haïm conducted in Paris, and it was it was a very great experience working with her for the first time. She brings a very unique energy to all of her work.
It was an amazing show. I went to see it in Paris. It was absolutely superb.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
I'll pay you later.
I know, exactly.
Big shoes to fill. However, you will do. I just wonder what from that experience you've brought over. Some adaptations to be made, I'm sure, but is there anything that has evolved or that you are actively changing?
A few things, but not really very many, because it was really quite recently. We're certainly not changing the plot any more than we already have.
Okay.
But I'm joking. But it was only 4 months ago, and it's exactly the same cast. I guess one of the big changes, of course, is that we're working with our chorus here, and that's always a huge pleasure because they're so fantastic in everything that they do in terms of their acting as well as their singing. And so it will be slightly different from that point of view. But otherwise, we've made some small changes, some small adjustments, because tonally, it's quite a hard piece to make consistent. It's a little bit like a Mozart opera in that sense, like Don Giovanni in particular. How you manage the tone between the moments that are a little bit more light-hearted and comic, and what is ultimately a very, very horrific end for Semele. Ultimately, it's the story of a man who incinerates his girlfriend, and there's no getting away from that. You can't dress it up and turn it into a romp, which it sometimes is. It's sometimes a romp. And but how you make that consistent across the piece is quite challenging. So we have made some small adjustments to make sure that as a whole it coheres, I suppose.
Yes. Let's not go through the plot. We've got the general gist of things. Marriage that doesn't happen, various things, don't mess with the gods, doesn't end well. However, if you could pick out, say, 3 themes that are really core to this, what would you say that they'd be?
Well, first of all, power.
Yeah.
This is something which Handel was interested in all of his operas, and of course it's a theme in art and culture in general. And what's interesting is that the original myth originated with Ovid, and Ovid was obviously a very famous Roman writer who had quite a complicated relationship with power, to the extent that he was actually exiled by the most powerful man in the world at that time, who was the emperor, Augustus, the first Roman emperor. And he was obviously someone who came a cropper of power. And Handel himself had quite a complicated relationship with patrons in particular, and he lived in what was then still a very powerful monarchy. And I think that comes out. Also, the way in which he depicts hierarchy is fascinating, and the different levels. And of course, he represents it in terms of class with the gods at the very top, and then the Thebans and the ordinary people at the bottom. And we decided that we were going to make it much more self-contained than that, and because we wanted to set it in a more contemporary setting in one single house with a household, and the differences that there were there between the classes, and the interaction of hierarchy and sex, desire, and how things don't work out, and also the corrupting influence of power. Ultimately, Jupiter is someone who has a compulsion to seduce and then destroy, and that's what we try and depict in the production.
Absolutely. I'll let you leave it at one, because power seemed to have many, many subcategories, so let's leave it there. But you mentioned the 18th century. Christian, can you take us back, as it were, to...
I was there.
You were there. I mean,
I'm looking good for 350
it's
years.
fine. We were hanging out together in London, Covent Garden. It was fine. The premiere in 1744, the previous Italian opera premiere was 1741. What had happened in those 3 years?
Well, certainly, of course, his most famous work was written, Messiah. Handel had sort of given up writing operas. Unfortunately, he didn't want to, but they just weren't hanging on. And he decided to almost invent this form of oratorio. So we have 1741, I think, for Messiah, 1744 for Semele. But I think Semele is his greatest opera. It's an opera, it's not an oratorio. You look at the wonders of Jephthah or Theodora, incredible pieces. Semele is very different, and it's a stage work. It demands to be staged.
Yes. Yes. Yet, the fact that you mention oratorio is really key. I mean, let's stick with calling it an opera, but it has those elements of oratorio in there. I mean, first performed during Lent. I mean, that's pretty shocking, right?
Pretty shocking with this.
Considering we now know what happens in Semele.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it didn't go down too well. A contemporary writer called it a bawdy opera. Which is
wasn't it a bordatorio?
Bordatorio.
I think that's what they called it, yeah.
Private eye was going wrong at that point, then clearly. Yes, exactly. So, you know, what shock, certainly, but the audiences coming to Covent Garden in Lent, the singers weren't required in the churches, so they were available. Yeah. You know, what should they have expected, and what did they get?
Probably they should have expected something like Messiah, something like Theodora, something like Jephthah. And I can't imagine what they thought when they sat down and heard this piece. I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, I think it's just... The thing that I always find with this, I think all of Handel is amazing. He invests everything in all of his works. But Semele is absolutely infused with love of various sorts. Yeah. You know, sort of betrayal, deception, but also the pure love that Semele has at the beginning is very strong.
It makes you wonder what was going on in Handel's private life. I mean, I know that we don't know, and I'm not about to ask you, but it does make you wonder at a time that he's writing mostly sacred texts, liturgical works, and then he comes out with this. Do you think he's trying to say something bigger about society?
I don't really know. I think he's just had some good tunes in his head and wanted to write them down.
What's interesting is that the text of Semele was written by William Congreve for an opera that was allegedly written much earlier, a few decades earlier, and it's not even certain that there was a performance of that opera. And so it was lying around as a potential opera libretto, and Handel picked it up but decided to call it an oratorio, really probably mainly for financial reasons.
Or marketing.
As I know, it's a lot cheaper to do a concert than to do a performance with set props and costumes. It just is, and so there was an economic driver behind that change.
Well, let's not tell the Opera House this right now, because
I certainly won't tell myself that.
Let's keep it on stage. But let's talk a little about this staging, because I appreciate we don't want to have too many spoilers here, but can you give us a brief introduction to the production itself and your creative approach?
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of the creative approach, I think probably most directors would say the same, that you really start with the music and you listen to the music over and over and over and over again until you have a feel for the atmosphere and the inner truth in the piece. And my personal approach is also to find out as much as possible about the composer and what was going on in their lives at the time. And because we've had this run of Handel pieces, oratorios, as Christian alluded to, Jephthah and Theodora in the last few years, and they all have this similar preoccupation in the last 10 years of Handel's career, that they deal with the predicament of an individual. And it gets darker and darker and darker, I think, over the course of those 10 years until you reach Jephthah, which is really, I mean, it talks a lot about darkness, actually, explicitly, because he was going blind as well himself. And I think that that's partly autobiographical, but also partly it's one of those things about a late career artist, and they often are dealing with the essential questions. Yes. And Semele is an early expression of that. And I think that to find what her predicament was, which is not this flighty, superficial woman. I mean, we talked a little bit about that earlier, but someone who really feels very deeply and is really in love with this man. And the way in which she's chewed up and spat out by him is fascinating. And, but as I say, to make it contemporary, to make it alive for an audience now, often I think it is necessary to make it feel more contemporary and to look more contemporary. And Anne-Marie Woods, the designer, and I, we spent a lot of time looking at what environments could work that would really bring out the immediacy of the text and the drama to make it live, how we would make clear the hierarchy, which is so important.
Yes. Was there a moment where there was that spark that unlocked this idea within the household and the hierarchy? Was there something
I think so, because before I was here, I did a lot of site-specific work in Northern Ireland, my previous job, but also even before that with Second Move, my company, which did lots of site-specific work in London. And I've always been a big believer that opera should relate in some way to the place that you make it in. And I guess from that, I started thinking about Paris, and I talked earlier about there's a real theme in French literature and films in particular, which deals with adultery and the relationship between, as I said, sex and power and desire and all of these things. And that's when we thought, actually, we can, I mean, I think Ben said that it was like Park Avenue, but actually we were thinking more something like the Champs-Élysées, actually, in terms of this palace that Jupiter inhabits and controls, and again, these different classes that are in this palace, and this household, which makes for hopefully, a very intense experience, because there should be an element of constraint, a feeling that certainly Semele can't leave this place. She's this kept woman, she's mistress of this guy. He doesn't want her to leave. He certainly doesn't want her to discover herself. And she says, actually, I want to be your equal. I want to be able to be out with you in public. I want to do all of the things that you do now with someone else. And he destroys that. He says, no, you can't, I don't want you to know me. And in that sense, it's like the Bluebeard myth. So those are all things that fed into this concept, I think.
I want to just very briefly go back to the oratorio idea, because it's almost as if that was a constraint that Handel wasn't going to be kept in. You know, I'm going to present it as this, but actually turn it into something else. But I just wonder, Christian, whether there are elements of oratorio that are given away by the music itself.
Oh, I don't know, really.
I'm thinking of like the choruses.
Well, I mean, exactly. We have these wonderful choruses.
I mean, potentially bigger than usual. Yeah,
I mean, the great thing about Semele, well, it's not maybe a great thing, but one of the things about Semele is that the choruses are actually quite short. It's totally different to something like Theodora or Jephthah, where we have maybe 40, 45 minutes of the entire work consisting of choruses. The choruses in Semele only add up to 19 minutes.
Right.
But they're so extraordinarily high impact.
They are, and they come with quite, it feels, increasing regularity.
Yeah, amazing. In the first act, we have these cease, and you know, basically where the wedding guests run away, and they come straight after one another. So there's this incredible energy that's built up, which carries on into the next scene. Yeah. That's the thing about Handel, is that basically it doesn't just stop. Yeah. He's created something. It's this marvelous miracle that basically the energy of what you've just done is still, even though it's even on a different page of the music, it's still there.
It's that fluidity, and perhaps it's a little bit that in terms of navigating the class system. You know, Semele wanting to go join the gods, there is this aspiration and ambition, as we've said. It's surprising, I suppose, and even more so considering the context of a Lenten performance and all the rest of it. But its sensuality, it must have been really quite shocking for those audiences. But a lot of these themes are still very relevant. Can you talk to us a little bit about the sensuality that's really contained in the music?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, I think we've just heard Where'er You Walk, which is extraordinary. I find Semele's O Sleep very sensual. It seems very, very simple that she's just saying, why can't I sleep? But I think she's just revved up for Jupiter, and he's just not coming there. I mean, it's extraordinary. And then the most, for me, it's erotic rather than, I mean, it's extraordinary, is Come to My Arms in Act 3 that Jupiter sings, which is just the way that Handel sets it. It starts off as a very delicate, just with the continuo, and then the strings gradually join in, and finally there's this flourishing of harmony, which is extraordinary.
And I think Christian put it really well earlier that Semele encompasses so many different forms of love, and yeah, lust, betrayal, despairing love, but also, yes, erotic love. And it's what's so curious is that we know almost literally nothing about Handel's own erotic life. Of course, he never married, and everyone speculates, was he this, was he that? But no one knows anything about him in that way. But it all comes out in this extraordinary music. And eroticism isn't necessarily something that one associates with that era of music, but my word, it comes through very strongly.
Well, eroticism, or really just the psychological element of it. I wonder how you work to bring that real inner world to life on stage, theatrically speaking.
Well, a lot of the work is done for you in the fact that the text is so good, and Congreve's text is brilliant. It certainly isn't a given, not at all. It's really hard, but what it does do, a fantastic. I think Puccini said something along the lines of. A good opera libretto is like a fantastic landscape that you build your house in, and it's all very well building a nice house, but if everything around it is rubbish, then it's not going to work. And what you've got is this incredible landscape which Congreve has made, and which you then inhabit with characters who are saying really good words with a lot of subtext. And that's not always the case with the Italian operas, for example.
Absolutely.
Which often you can tell were written in a hurry, and there are loose ends in the plot and so on, but that's not the case here. And there's really hard, because Handel made a lot of cuts himself, there's not really any fat that you need to trim in that sense. And when you've got those great words and you've got the music which is so expressive of emotion, that's your way in to think about how you're going to stage it with the singers, of course. But also having that very clear world that you're setting it in helps a lot, because it helps the choices emerge naturally from that choice of world.
Yes, and you can see them, and presumably you could say, well, naturally you would move from here to here, and this is how you respond.
Exactly, but then sometimes, you know, a lot of the ideas will come from my designer as well, Anne-Marie. For example, Anne-Marie came up with the idea of the bath that Somnus is asleep in, which is a fantastic moment, I think. So, yeah. So as always, it's a team effort.
Yes, absolutely. Now, speaking of the team, Christian, you're working this time with modern orchestra and a big chorus. What are some of the key challenges preparing a Baroque opera, either technically or in terms of style?
I suppose we're very lucky that over the last, excuse me, my voice is going, over the last 60, 70 years with the period instrument brigade that have come, and we're sort of, I suppose we are now more used to hearing Handel on period instruments. But I think that does a great disservice to Handel, and it does a great disservice to the modern players who love to play it. Absolutely. And play it as, I mean, I don't know, I did Alcina here a few years ago, and the orchestra were extraordinary. And I've just had one rehearsal with them on Monday, and it's going to be equally extraordinary. It doesn't need to be done on period instruments. It's just, I mean, some people, in a way, it's actually more relevant to do it on modern instruments.
Why not? I mean, you bring in theorbos, you bring in a harpsichord,
yeah, of
but
course.
It doesn't mean that doesn't blend with the band.
And it's all about following the text.
Right.
If the violins use the bows and the cellos and violas to follow the text and to have a lightness of approach,
yes,
and think about light and shade, rather than if they're playing Die Valkyrie or something, it's going, there's this very seamless, wonderful playing. Yeah. Whereas with Baroque, actually probably with Mozart as well, there's a sense of strong, weak, like words.
Yes. Yes, and some may say within historical performance that some of the machinery, the mechanics of it, it works that way, the bows work that way. But
yeah,
actually,
exactly.
As you say, it comes down to text and interpretation, and modern instruments can do that just
and
as well.
It absolutely isn't a compromise.
Right.
Some people think actually it's totally valid. And some of my best, I mean, Alcina here a couple of years ago was the best experience of my career by a long shot. And this is going to be equal, until now, of course.
Yeah.
Well, Christian, I think we're really seeing an appetite among 21st century audiences for 18th century opera on the main stage. Do you feel that? And do you feel like people are coming and finding something in these operas like Alcina, Semele, that maybe they're not feeling in other more familiar works?
I think the secret with the Baroque music is the simplicity. If you look back to Monteverdi, where it all sort of started, you've just got one line and with the singer's notes and text, and then a line with a continuo, and we improvise with that. So every time it's different. And Handel's the same, actually. If you think about most of the score is, again, just a singer's line and a few lines of orchestra. When it looks sort of incredibly clean, and it is clean music. But then it's like, I don't know, pick and mix. Also, you know, you pick this and you can do this, an ornament here, a crescendo here, a diminuendo here. And it's all there, but you also create.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think there is an appetite for this music. And of course, it was dormant for so long, for 200 years, really, over 200 years. And the sense of discovery that there is, even with pieces like Theodora and Jephthah, which, yeah, they've been performed elsewhere, but they hadn't been performed here for the best part of 300 years. And that's really inspiring, I think, because it's really our heritage. I mean, there's not much. I mean, I talk in the programme about how between Semele, which has got this fabulous outpouring of melody and wonderful choruses, and it's all in English, between Semele and Peter Grimes, nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing in that period. I mean, there's Gilbert and Sullivan, but even they wouldn't have described those pieces as operas. So, but what there was were excerpts. There was Where Are You Walk? There are all these famous numbers. There was The Messiah, and so there's a tradition that's expressed in choral music, and this is our stuff. And to be able to kind of bring it to life here, I think is special.
And I think early on, let's be honest, I think there was a bit of a worry that these were very long operas. And actually, it's testament to the dynamicism of the band, to the staging, to the way it's brought to life, to the singers, that actually it whips by.
And Semele's not that long. It's only 2.5 hours of music.
There we go.
So it's no longer than your average Italian opera.
Quite.
Yeah.
Now, you've been programming the Royal Opera's Handel series for a number of years now. Just looking ahead, can you give us a glimpse? You know,
well,
you just did say Semele
yes.
to Britain, and there's nothing in between, but what else have you got in mind?
Well, next year we're doing Ariadante, which is a piece that I think you said it's one of your favourite pieces,
yes,
and it is a masterpiece, another masterpiece, which was, I think it was the first opera that he staged in his Covent Garden series in 1735, I think it was, and again, unbelievably, it hasn't been staged here since the 1730s. We tried to stage it in 2020, but I think we all know what happened in 2020. And we did a concert instead. It was one of those COVID filmed concerts, which was great, but it's not the same as a full staging. So that's going to be really exciting. We've got a great cast coming for that. And Jetske Meinsen, who's just had big success with Parsifal down at Glyndebourne, is directing that. So that's the next Handel that we've got in store. And much more to look forward to after that.
All right, tantalising.
I should also mention Justino, which again is in the it's in the Limbury Theatre, and it hasn't been staged at all in the UK, I believe, since the late 1730s. So we'll be doing that in the Limbury, and that's directed by Joe Hill-Gibbons with David Bates.
Great space for that as well.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
just right. Just right. Last word to you, Christian. What do you hope that audiences and performers take away with them from this journey with Handel?
Oh, I don't know. I think love for the music.
Yeah.
I think it's all about that. That's what, excuse me, my voice is totally gone now.
Emotion, it's the emotion, it's fine.
Yeah, it's the emotion, I know exactly, that's the thing. No, I think it is love. I think it's, and truth is one of Handel's, I mean, the characters are just extraordinarily truthful.
Yeah. Catharsis, you know, one hopes as well, because the story is so sad and it's so tragic, but it's expressed with such extraordinary humanity and beauty that even though you mourn the loss of Semele at the end, you feel in some way invigorated or inspired, I think, by this amazing piece that it is. And
by this chorus, O Terror, which I think, even though it's at the end, is the centre of the opera oratorio.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. I can't wait to see it. That is it for tonight's Insight, I'm afraid. But you, if you can't wait to see it either, you can go and book tickets for Semele on the main stage here at the Royal Opera House. You can book those from the 30th of June, and all the details are on the website. Thank you to all our guests this evening, singers, creatives, everybody. Thanks also to all of you for being here in the audience and to those of you watching at home. It has been a pleasure to be with you all for this Insight supported by Rolex. Good night.